Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the 435 podcast. I'm your host, Robert McFarland. Over the next several episodes, guys, we're going to be doing a deep dive into the 2025 municipal elections. Mayors and city council members from all over Southern Utah are going to be seeking your vote in helping shape the future of our cities. So this is the place that you're going to be able to get one-on-one conversations with all the candidates to help you make the best decision for you come election season. So please make sure you like and subscribe, share it with other voters throughout Washington County, and make sure they have the information they need to make the decisions that are going to be best for us in the county. We hope you enjoy this episode and this series of episodes, guys. We'll see you out there.
From the Blue Form Media Studios, this is the 435 podcast, the pulse of Southern Utah.
Welcome to the show. So tell me a little bit about Mike Scott. Where are you from?
My wife and I spent about 35, 40 years in Seattle. We moved here in 2003, full-time in 2005. And prior to that, Patty grew up in New Orleans. I grew up in Montreal. So we met in Seattle.
That's cool. And what'd you do in Seattle?
We had a small little research and consulting business on, sort of doing financial, collecting data on commercial real estate, financial information, published that for many years. We always saw that this goes back to the late 1970s when we started. It's early on. And at that time, you could open up the Wall Street Journal every day and see what your stock was worth, but you couldn't do that for commercial real estate.
Yeah.
And so that's what we created, reports that you could analyze the market, analyze your own property, how's it performing, where's its probable value range. I mean, not a full-blown appraisal, but it gave you market updates all the time. So we did that for a long time. We closed that business in 2017, the end of the year.
Okay.
And
a lot had changed with collecting data and stuff like that in that time frame from the 70s till then.
There was. And boy, when technology really started to kick in the early 2000s, well, even the late 90s.
Yeah, late 90s.
That really helped a lot.
Yeah. So you were able to shift as that came on, you were able to shift the business and keep going. Did you work with a national, commercial brokerage for that?
It was just our own small business. It was just a passion of ours to do something like that. It wasn't, cool. It was maybe a little more profitable than running a podcast.
Probably.
But
marginally
not
so.
a whole lot.
Not a whole lot.
It was just what we did.
Yeah. That makes sense. So you moved here in 2005. Was that retirement essentially, or
no? We still ran our business, but again, because of technology, we were able to do it remotely for the most part. So we had to travel back to Seattle a few times a year, and but everything else we could do from here and enjoy the sunshine and ride our bikes up in Snow Canyon and do all the cool stuff.
And that was a time where there was not as many people here. It was
that is true.
A lot more. It was an actual small town.
It was about 4,000 people in Ivins when we moved in, and we're probably I think we're close to 12,000 right now.
Oh, really? Yeah. Full-time residents?
At least 11. Yes.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I thought it was less than that for full-time residents, but I guess. Yeah, that kind of growth definitely changes the area. So you moved directly into Ivins at that time?
We did.
Yeah. Where in Ivins, just generally?
We're on the way to Tuacahn, on the road to Tuacahn.
Oh, okay, cool.
When we came here at the end of 2002 because we hiked. We used to ski in Deer Valley, in the winters, and then in the falls we'd come to Utah to hike all the parks. Zion's the one park we never got to. You rent a car in Salt Lake and you try, and it was always on our list.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
But you just spend a little too much time somewhere else.
Yeah.
We never got there. We had to drive back to Salt Lake to fly home to go to work. So we did a trip from Las Vegas. We rented a car, came into St. George. The whole purpose was to spend most of the week hiking in Zion.
Yeah.
Never been to the St. George area at all. Only other parts of Utah.
Yeah.
Just fell in love with it immediately. Never got to Zion on that trip.
Nice.
We bought a lot and got a house designed to start building.
That's awesome. And then the market changed, but you've stuck it out ever since. You didn't leave when everybody else left.
We didn't leave.
You didn't leave. That's good. So have you always been kind of politically active? Because you're seeking re-election for Ivins City Council. Had you held any offices previous to that?
I was on the Planning Commission in Ivins for 10 years.
Okay.
And that ended in like 2018 or so. And other than that, I've never had any political aspirations at all. And I wouldn't really call Planning Commission political. It's more just doing the work.
Yeah.
Right.
And with your background with commercial real estate, there was some familiarity with development and in seeing how cities grow and things like that.
Right.
So that 10 years you were on planning commission, you decided to run for city council 4 years ago, and you won. What have you seen? Or I guess let's go back to city planning commission. What did you see going on over those 10 years that really was interesting to you, and where you felt like you could contribute? What was going on with Ivins, maybe for people that aren't aware or don't have a whole lot of history? Because a lot of Ivins have moved there since 2020. There's been a big boom since just 2020. So maybe help us understand that 10 years you did previously in city council, so 2008 to 2018, basically.
In that range, yeah. That's about right.
Yeah.
What I liked about the Planning Commission is I like to dig into things. I like data.
Yeah.
I guess you saw that from my overloaded
No, you're
answers.
excellent questionnaire answers. You're excellent.
And so that's what I enjoyed most about it. Issues would come up to us, and I liked giving the rest of the Planning Commission detailed information on the subject rather than just shooting from the cuff at every meeting.
Yeah.
And I found that all the issues are really complex. I may be merging sort of Planning Commission and City Council issues, but when the Hidden Springs RV Resort came in as an example, the city didn't have any ordinance to say, well, what does that look like? How do you build it? What kind of setbacks do you have? What do you do? And so, not just me, but others on the Planning Commission too, we just had to do a lot of homework to dig into it and sort of create that ordinance because the City Council determined that they wanted that RV park. So that was the easy part. The hard part was now we had to come up with an ordinance. And so I think we passed that 2016, 2017, or well, we didn't pass it. We recommended to the City Council, an ordinance. So we know how to build an RV park. And I think it was a really good ordinance. But then on City Council over the last couple of years, there's been a couple of cases where the developer of that park then is struggling with an issue. And I look at it and I say, gee, I don't really remember why we put that in as a requirement because what he's struggling with that problem makes sense. How do we solve it?
Yeah.
So it's you don't get it 100% right. Yeah. But you try.
Yeah. And you like the attempt. You like the ability to kind of craft it.
I do like the ability to work on it.
So over those 10 years, as the Planning Commission goes, was there a lot of that, creating ordinances and things like that? Where I guess on the Planning Commission, you don't necessarily create ordinances. The City Council does that. But like, did you run into issues like that along the way where somebody presents a plan and you kind of have to figure out, because Ivins is kind of the youngest city in Washington County because they didn't have water. They were one of the last ones in the county to get water. And so if you look back in time, Ivins was like kind of the trailer park. I mean, if we're honest, it was a trailer park and there wasn't as much development, but there was a ton of development that happened from basically 2004, 2005 on till today in Ivins. Did you have to do a lot of crafting with that?
Yeah, you do. And so the City Council will determine that the city needs an ordinance, but then it's crafting. It always starts at the Planning Commission.
Okay, got it.
So the Planning Commission sort of has to create it. The other things we do is we did a review of all the land uses in Ivins, and so while on the Planning Commission, a couple things that we created on the land use map was, well, we want more commercial development. What kind of development? So we thought, well, for sort of the walkable city concept, neighborhood commercial would be really neat. So that would be something like ground floor retail and housing above, whether it's for the owner of the retail or somebody else. And so you see that all over the country, just so every few blocks, there's a little corner area that's this neighborhood commercial. And so we thought, well, what a terrific idea. And other cities have done that. So that's been that had been on the map for many years. Nobody ever took us up on that, so it's kind of disappearing. There's still maybe probably two locations left in the city, one or two that are that designation, but no property owner or developer seems to want to do that. So that's something that probably should go away, and we need to look at something else. The other thing we looked at was, well, it'd be great along Highway 91 to have professional office, like sort of a moderate-sized office park. Nobody took us up on that. So again, you don't get them all right, but the key is if you look at these periodically and say, okay, what do we do next? Did that work? If it doesn't work, should we just keep beating our head against the wall with that idea or look for something different?
It seems like, at least in Ivins, the eggs, all their eggs in their economic basket went into resort. Their idea was, we're going to build an economic and a tax base around a resort type developments. Is that right? And that's probably been going on for about 10 years or maybe 15.
That's right. And it's probably, it's at least 10 years. So that became sort of part of our general plan to focus on resort development. Land was designated. Now, actually, you could go back to where Black Desert Resort is now. You could go back to 2000. I haven't seen maps earlier than that, but in 2000, where Black Desert Resort was designated on the land use map as commercial. And around 2006 or 2008, it was designated as either resort commercial or something that meant resort commercial. But it was really probably around 2015 where the real focus came to, let's really push for that. And, up until then we had Red Mountain Resort. What else did we have? That's all we really had at that time. By 2015, we had Movara, which started out as the biggest loser. And so since then, there's more.
But then like Arcadia and Paradise Village, so like the vacation rental market kind of took advantage of that resort zoning, right?
They filled that in. That's in Santa Clara, not Ivins.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, so they came in sort of filling.
Look at me. I don't even know my city boundaries.
It's an odd boundary there.
It is. It's right there at the edge.
Because we roll down the western side of it, and they're on the eastern side.
Okay.
And you kind of think you think of the boundaries as being more north-south. Right?
Yeah. Thank you for correcting me on that. Now I feel a little dumb. So the resort, Black Desert kind of fulfilled a big, huge need there. And looking out in the future, it seems like that's going to continue. So maybe help somebody understand your perspective on what does the development of Ivins, because I would argue many people view Ivins as anti-development, but they don't want to see more development come into the city. Is that a fair assessment of what the citizens of Ivins believe?
Yeah, I think that's kind of normal everywhere. I just, it's nice to wake up in the morning and look out at your city with still a fair amount of undeveloped land, and you just enjoy that view, that open space that's there, and more development keeps taking it away. But all that land is owned by, it's private property, and those the owners of that land, have the right to do something on it. It's a question of what to do. And so we haven't had, in the last couple of years, we haven't had a whole lot of single family development. We, aside from what I'd call tourism related, whether it's a resort or anything else that's tourist related, we've had that. There's the Black Desert, then there's the Sitla site that that got approved for a couple hundred homes, mostly detached, some attached, and then about almost 400 units of what I call it tourist accommodation, short-term rentals, whatever you want to call it. That hasn't started yet. I don't know when that's going to start. Then there's Sentier, which that goes back to 2015 or 2017. They started, and here it is 7 or 8 years later. It's still, they've started, and it looks like their intention is to go ahead probably pretty soon. And that would be, I think originally what was approved was somewhere around 100 hotel units, and maybe it was 100 or so combination of hotel units and villas.
Mm-hmm.
And
seems like only villas have come out of that so far.
Right.
Yeah.
But it sounds like they want to go ahead on the hotel finally. And so right now we have up and running around 800 or 900 units of what I call tourism accommodations.
Mm-hmm.
But what has been planned, approved, talked about, zoned for, or land use for is around 2,800 units.
Yeah.
So in a city with about 4,500 single family homes, that's a lot.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it seems like there's not going to be a slowdown too much of that other than a restriction of resources, right? And so the slowdown of interest in it is going to continue, I think. But like you said, developments take time, right? And so do you think, from the perspective of what is Ivins doing for affordable housing, if we were to just pin down what is affordable housing, Ivins has the most expensive single-family residence in the county. It's most expensive real estate in the county, really, outside of Springdale, which you could probably put just on its own little island. But for the number of units, it's for sure the most expensive. Do you feel like there's appetite to really kind of force more development, feeling like we already have 2,800 units that are, in the process? Do you think there's an appetite within the city to continue to help with that density growth, or what's your perspective on what we should do about that higher density pressure?
First, I'd split out those 2,800 units. That's tourist accommodations, right?
Okay.
So that's the resort type accommodations.
Okay.
That'll generate the hope is that's going to generate sales tax and room tax for the city. That takes pressure off of residents so we can provide services. Affordable housing, that's housing. That's a separate category. Again, just like sort of the wish that development would stop, which I think is almost universal. There's a desire here to not have high density. Let's have low density. But the state's putting pressure on all the cities in Utah to allow more density. And the odd thing there is, just as I mentioned before about our ideas for professional office park or neighborhood commercial. So we've got a high density residential zone that allows 5,000 square foot lots. And I think that's sort of the state's target. Allow that kind of density. We've got it out there on our land use map in spots all over the city. I'm pretty sure, at least in the last 3.5 years that I've been on city council, but I think a lot longer than that, I don't think any developer has built homes on 5,000 square foot lots. They have not taken advantage of that high density residential land use. Instead, they typically go for medium density, which means they're going to be building at least 7,500 square foot, 10,000, 12,000 square foot lots. So how do we handle, or how do we solve the affordable housing problem? All a city can do is sort of provide the mechanism, and then the market's going to decide whether or not they want to build on that. So what we need, we finished wrapping up our general plan at the update at the end of last year, towards the end. And now the issue is to relook at our land use map, make sure that it fits with the general plan, and then find these problem areas. So just like neighborhood commercial, nobody took us up on that. So what to do? And so most of that wound up getting rezoned to something else, but there's still maybe one or two spots for it. What do we do with that? Our high density residential zone. Why aren't developers taking us up on that to build single family?
What do you think? Why do you think that they're not taking up? Do you think it's the hurdles or the requirements outside of just the zoning capability in Ivins are difficult to deal with?
I think mostly it's just the land costs in Ivins. It's just really expensive. And so maybe the numbers pencil better for the developer to do bigger homes on 10,000 square foot lots. There's certainly a huge demand, I think, for more affordable housing. But why aren't they taking up the 5,000 square foot lots? I don't have that answer, but that's what we should figure out.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that makes sense. Well, so what's your perspective on, let's shift away from housing for a little bit and talk about infrastructure. Where do you feel like we've made progress in Ivins for infrastructure, whether it's public, like public safety services, utility services, things like that? Have we made progress there? And do you see there's still challenges ahead for Ivins in dealing with some of the infrastructure, issues that we might face?
There's definitely challenges ahead, but we've done a lot. So on the public safety front, a big thing once I got on the city council in 2022, we realized pretty soon that the Center Street Fire Station sometimes wasn't really functional. It wasn't operational. There wasn't staffing or enough staffing there to be able to roll out on a call. Mm-hmm. And the reason for that, to a large extent, was our Santa Clara Ivins Fire Department was predominantly volunteer. And with all of the requirements, regulations, training, and everything required, which just keeps growing every year, mm-hmm. It was just harder to man a volunteer fire department. So we went to full-time professional fire department, and that made a huge difference at least for Ivins. So there's a fire station on Rachel, mm-hmm. near Harmons.
Right.
And so that covers Santa Clara very well, not completely, but it covers Santa Clara completely, but extremely well for most of Santa Clara. When we didn't have Center Street operating a bunch of times, that Rachel station barely covered half of Ivins to the same level. So it was essential to get that in. Of course, that required a big hit to our budget, which I estimated is probably around $500,000 a year added to our budget for that, to really change the model to full-time professional. But now, it makes a lot of sense. You can get EMS services out quickly. You get fire services out quickly. So that's important. Other infrastructure, we've got, we have good infrastructure overall. Very good. And because we're still a young city, most of that infrastructure is pretty new. Mm-hmm. Our sewer lines, our water lines, our roads, they're going to last 50, 70, 80 years, depending on what the component is. Mm-hmm. And most of them are somewhere between a few years old and 20 to 30 years old. But we're really looking at, as other cities are, do we just ignore it until it falls apart and leave that as a problem for future generations, mm-hmm. your kids?
Hopefully not.
Or do we start working on it now? And we're starting to work on that now. And last year we really started focusing on, and when we looked at the budget, to sort of look out, how much are we setting aside, or how much can we set aside each year to fund these replacements when they happen down the road. And so I think that's the challenge, but we're working on it, so we're moving in that direction. Mm-hmm. One infrastructure thing that I think is a big problem is obviously we're going to be continuing to grow. We're 11 or 12,000 people now in Ivins. Our build-out population estimate is just under 20,000. That number, chances are, will grow. Because build-out is based on our current land use, mm-hmm. What kind of densities are there. And for the most part, when the land actually starts to get developed, it starts to get developed at the higher density end. Not mm-hmm. all the way down to 5,000 square foot lots, but higher density. So probably our build-out population will be over 20,000. That may be decades away before it happens, but that's the trend. Certainly all the tourist accommodations are going to add a lot of pressure to our roads in mm-hmm. particular. And so what we really need, I think, for Ivins, but it's outside of our control to make it happen, is the Western Corridor. Mm. Because that changes the dynamic for the city of, your only ingress and egress right now is Snow Canyon Parkway or Highway 91,
Right.
which really narrows down as you go down into downtown Santa Clara.
Yeah,
right? So that's
absolutely.
not an ideal way to get in or out of Ivins. And I think it puts too much pressure on Santa Clara too. But the Western Corridor then would create another way to move from other parts of St. George and I-15 into Ivins, which would be huge. We really need that.
So what do we do, thinking about that infrastructure need and that growth, if we just build residential, if that's kind of the primary development that's happened really over the last decade, right? The last 10 years, where does that revenue come from? From my perspective, it seems to me that the data shows that a residential household is a net cost to a city. There's not enough income generated by a house to cover the infrastructure needs of the city. So what are some of those ways that Ivins, or from your perspective, should there be focus on? How do you increase the revenue to cover a 25,000 population?
Well, you're right. Our property taxes on our homes don't pay just even the annual operating costs, let alone the infrastructure needs of a city
Or future, yeah.
Yeah, for the future. We're in the property taxes cover around 20% of our operating budget right now. And so the other 80% is coming from sales tax, room tax, other kinds of taxes and fees, highway taxes, and on and on. For some of our infrastructure, like our water lines, our sewer lines, our storm drains, those are covered long-term from our utility bills. So we pay on our utility bills for the water we're using, and we're also paying for maintaining and replacing that system. The question is that amount being set aside every month the right number? And so, we're looking at all that right now. Is that the right number? Road infrastructure, there's nothing on a utility bill for roads. So at least for all of our water infrastructure, I can say we have money in the bank.
Right.
At this point, I don't know if we have the right amount of money or not, but we have money in the bank, and we have a plan that those utility bills are intended to cover those costs. That's just been the way it's been. With roads, I can tell you for certainty we don't have any money in the bank.
Yeah.
And so what's the plan? And so, some cities, Provo comes to mind, they've had a transportation utility fee that they've tagged onto their utility bill every month. So every resident just pays, I don't have the exact number, but I think it's around $3 or $4 a month for a homeowner towards this road replacement reserve. Just goes into a pot, and it's only to be used for replacing the roads when they wear out. Commercial properties will pay almost certainly more than that, sort of based on how much traffic that they're creating. So, I think the ice box would pay probably more than a homeowner,
Right.
but a lot less than Black Desert.
Right.
So we're looking at that. We don't have a transportation utility fee, and so we're going to look into whether that's appropriate or not.
Have you talked about impact fees?
So impact fees, what they do is, for the average single family home in Ivins, our impact fees right now, and the water districts, so all the impact fees a developer has to pay, it's a little over $29,000 per single family home. So that's a big hit.
Yeah.
And then we get into this philosophical discussion. Well, who pays it? Is it the developer? No, not really. It's the home buyer.
In some cases.
But what the impact fees are there for is, so if I'll just use an example. So if you're building a 100-home subdivision, clearly that's going to put additional strain on our parks. And so we have all these master plans for all of our infrastructure. So our parks master plan defines an appropriate level of service. So how many acres, how many residents should you have for every acre of park, or vice versa? And so I think it's we want about 3 acres of park for every 1,000 residents. So you add 100 more residents, you need more park. So the developer pays a parks impact fee, and that is to acquire enough new parkland and build all the components of the park as well for the additional demand they're putting on it, so that as the city grows, as new development comes in, the level of service remains the same. We have the same number of miles of trails. We have the same number of acres of park per resident. And so all of the impact fees are there to pay for the direct impact caused by the new development. And so if there's road improvements that need to be made, typically there are curb, gutter, road expansion. So as you go through our city, you'll see now where development hasn't taken place and it's still farmland, you'll see suddenly the road shrinks because the developer hasn't come in yet and paid the impact fee to put in the appropriate road.
Right.
And so the impact fees are very significant, but they pay for the immediate infrastructure that development needs, right? Just to make it viable and to maintain our level of service. So for the parks example, it doesn't pay for anything beyond that. So now we have more road, more curb and gutter, more sewer line, more water line. Now we have to take care of it.
Yeah.
Impact fees don't pay for that.
Yeah.
Well, there'll be new property taxes from all those homes, but
they
as
don't
you say, they don't cover it.
They don't cover it.
And so this is where you have to have commercial development. Either that or property taxes would be astronomical. I mean, if they're only covering 20% of our operations now, that means they'd have to be 5 times as much just to cover operations, and that wouldn't even cover infrastructure.
Is that
needs.
on the table to do a property tax increase?
Yeah, not 5 times though. Yes,
no,
it is.
Right.
And so actually, I brought the idea up last year because last year, well, the answer is yes, it is on the table. And so we're going to have a truth and taxation hearing on August 12th or 14th.
Okay.
I should know the date.
I think the 12th is the primary, right? I think that's the
okay.
primary.
So the 14th.
Is probably the 14th?
Yeah.
Maybe. I'd have to double check my date.
And so that's a public hearing. We had a talk about, we call it at Rocky Vista University last week about it, just to try to let people know that it's potentially coming. We can still decide not to do it. We could decide to do a smaller amount, but we're looking to increase property taxes citywide by $860,000 at this point. So we'll keep playing with those numbers, and maybe it could be lower, but that's the most that we would raise it by. That's a significant increase. Our property taxes now are about $2.2 million citywide. So 860 is a big percentage increase, but on a $750,000 home, I think it adds about $114 a year to your property taxes. Because the Ivins share, I mean, everybody hears property taxes, we're going to raise property taxes. The Ivins share of property taxes is a small percentage of the total property tax bill. Right. So I brought this up last year because last year I worked with our finance director, who's just tremendous, to really say, for everything we're doing, let's not just focus on this year's budget that we're trying to pass. Let's look out 5 years into the future, especially because we have things like Black Desert that aren't remotely done yet. But what is the potential impact that they're going to have to our budget, positive and negative? And so look out 5 years on what are our revenue streams likely to be, what are our expenses likely to be, what are our capital needs, and where are we going to get that money from? We've always had, I always called it a wish list. My first 2 years on city council, for every budget, you have to approve a 5-year capital plan. Well, we've always got like about $30 million of stuff on a 5-year capital plan without a clue how we're going to fund it. And that's maybe not fair. I mean, I think Cade and the finance department knows some of that's going to be paid for by impact fees. Some of it's going to be paid for through our enterprise funds, which is what I was talking about before. That's the utility bill payment you make every month. The portion that doesn't have to go directly to the Water Conservancy District to pay for the water that you used. Yeah, it goes to infrastructure. We put it in an enterprise fund that can only be used for that particular use. Right. And so what we did last year is we said, okay, let's just run out for 5 years. What's our operating budget look like? What's our reserve look like? We should have a rainy day fund. The state requires us to have one, but they don't require much. They require that you just have 5% of your annual operating budget. That's nothing. They set a limit. You can't have more than 35% of your annual income, and 35% is only 4 months in the bank of revenue. And then what about all of our other funds? How do they look? Mm-hmm. And so when we did those numbers, we were balancing our budget for the current year. Mm-hmm. State requires that you do that anyway. Right. So we balanced our budget, but it wasn't looking good going out 5 years. And so I proposed last year that, well, I think we should look at a property tax increase. Mm-hmm. And we talked about it for a couple of meetings. And then we decided, and I agreed, let's wait a year and just see how sales and room tax revenue comes in. Mm-hmm. And is Sentier getting off the ground? Is the Sitla site getting off the ground? How much is Black Desert doing? And maybe things will look better. And because we're making all kinds of assumptions for the next 5 years, right?
You're going to have to,
Well, things didn't look as good as even our assumptions. And so we're back to the table now saying, I believe we need to do it. And I'll take the heat for this. I'm the one who brought it up. I'm pushing for it. I think everybody on the city council agrees we need it. There's some disagreement about how much should it be.
Right.
And the interesting thing here is I'm running for city council, and is it the smartest thing in the world to say I want to raise your taxes?
It's not. I'm telling you right now, it's not the smartest.
So I know that, but I mean, you just have to do it. But it makes me think of Mark Twain. He said, suppose I'm an idiot. Suppose I'm a politician. Oh, I repeat myself. So I'm proving I'm an idiot in a campaign year.
That's okay.
But to me, it's essential.
Well, I appreciate whenever there's a proposal for a tax increase, a lot of times it's the Band-Aid or it's the pill that the city views they need, but is an unpopular one within the voters. And so it always comes back to, well, how do we re-budget? What can we cut out, right? Because the American citizen in me is like, no, I want to give the government less money. Mm-hmm. And so how do we provide an environment to where I can give the government less money and we can continue to still operate, but there's certain utilities that are required for us to continue to operate and where you don't go into a deficit, because cities go bankrupt quite often. It's not as abnormal as I think most people realize. It's a tough thing to do. So I appreciate the time you spent. You're very analytical. I think you cover, out of all the city council members in Ivins that I've watched, I think you're very diligent in the decision making and plans that have been proposed and how you analyze those things. So I've always appreciated that about you. When you think about your rerunning, what's the why? Why are you doing this? What if you look at a voter and say, hey, this is what I care about the most, what is that to them or to you?
Well, originally when I got in, I wanted to do some things, and sort of the financial side of the budget, be fiscally responsible. That's all part of it. Things move slowly in government. Mm-hmm. It's not like private business at all. And we've made a lot of strides. I feel good about a lot of what I've done. I'm most frustrated about not getting bang for my buck the time that I've put in on the water issue. This is huge. It's huge for Ivins. We really rely on the Water Conservancy District for almost all of our water. Mm-hmm. We're the youngest city. We have the smallest amount of water rights. Mm-hmm. And so that's a big issue. I've learned a lot about water. I understand a lot of the ins and outs, and I want to be the elected official voice, or an elected official voice. You have more clout as an elected official. Mm-hmm. Not much clout, but you have more. Yeah. And so I want to keep pushing.
You get a seat at the table.
And then The fiscal responsibility side, I want to keep pushing. I think we're on solid ground. Our finance director's great, but I want it ingrained in our system. So in the past, Ivins has spent money sort of out of its general fund reserve that I don't think was the best thing to do. I'm not going to pass harsh judgment on it. I wasn't there making the decisions, but you have to be really diligent. What are you going to spend the money on? So as an example, the Mustang horses at the roundabout by Black Desert, that was a freebie for the city. That was a donation. There's another sculpture piece that's now at City Hall. That's something that the city spent money on, and a lot of money. I think it's a great sculpture. It really represents sort of the whole history and dynamic of the city, but it shouldn't come out of our general fund. And so now our focus is, for art. So we have, sculpture sort of art on loan, so the art it gets installed for 1 year and then the artist takes it back. So we have the Lyman Whitaker wind sculptures on Highway 91.
Yep.
There is going to be a campaign launched in a week or so to raise money to buy that sculpture because people like it, but it's not going to come out of the general fund. Right. I want to be really laser focused on what that fund's for. And like even in this budget, we're not putting into this budget is just to operate the city pretty much as is. A lot of, a couple of years ago, a resident came in with the idea that, wouldn't it be great to have benches along our walking trails? Great idea. We haven't done it yet. We can't find the room for it in our operating budget. Wouldn't it be a great idea to have more pickleball courts? We have a few. Great idea. But at $250,000 a court, that's about what it costs. I mean, you can't believe the numbers involved.
Oh, I can. I can.
I started the youth council of, when first year I was on city council, and they came up with an incredible idea last year of Ivins doesn't have an ADA swing set. We don't have an ADA swing set. And so let's raise money for an ADA swing set. This was their idea. So I went to Parks Department and say, well, what's that going to cost? And I'm thinking, okay, I know it's going to probably be more durable than a Home Depot swing set.
Yeah.
But what's it going to cost? It's going to cost $77,000. And there's 5 swings.
Yeah.
But still, it's because you have to put a shade structure over it. You have to put rubber flooring on it. And the swing set only costs $11,000 only. I'm talking like a politician now. That's still a lot of money.
Yeah.
But all of these things add up. So to me, it's all about fiscal responsibility. Just things are expensive. So we're not, there's so many things that we're not putting in this budget that just to operate. So I decided that I wanted to run again to really try to institutionalize some of these ideas. We're doing it, we're getting there, but we're still fine-tuning it, and I want to see it through. And then the other issue is the Western Corridor, water. Those are big things. And I think that new people can come on to city council and they'll bring great things to the table. I can't say that isn't true, because I came on and I think I'm bringing great things to the table. So would any new people. But I feel that I've learned a lot that will help, I think, in the next 4 years. And hopefully these things that take too long in government will get done.
Well, that's a good transition to kind of my last question. And we covered a lot of territory, and I do want to encourage anybody listening to go to votestg.com and find your questionnaire, the questionnaire I send out to all the candidates, and your responses to those, because I think it gives a little bit more in depth as to your perspective on affordable housing and energy and infrastructure and things like that. So I appreciate you filling that out. So
were you able to get it all in?
I got it. I got it. I'll get it all in. Yeah. Okay. The form doesn't give you enough characters, but the website gives me plenty of characters. I could fit it in there. So make sure you take some time to review that one from Mike. It's an interesting transition point because what is your opinion on term limits? Do you feel like at the city level, at the state level, the county level, should there be term limits for elected officials?
Yeah, I have always thought that there should be. I started out saying I'm only going to be a one-term city council member, and here I am running for a second term.
Okay.
Now I'm saying I'm only going to do my second term, and that's it. And fortunately for the public, that's all I would do, because I'm just going to be too old. Right?
Okay.
But I believe term limits are a good thing. The flip side to that is I'd say that, if you look at what our mayor's done, Mayor Hart, he'll wind up 16 years as mayor.
Yeah.
And over that time, that extra time has bought him a loud vocal seat at so many tables. So we've been able to get a lot of money, from the county, the state, from COG, Council of Governments, for projects, because he had a big seat at the table that sort of develops over time. So I'm a little mixed on that. But yeah, I believe in term limits. I think you get fresh blood in, and that's a good thing.
Yeah, because my argument would be he did buy a lot of time, but also it buys a lot of other things. And is the system healthier because of that time? And I tend to think that it's not. I think that idea of what are the fundamental problems within the system as we have it at the moment comes from politicians that have become career politicians. And does that give fresh set of eyes? And is it a system-wide issue? And where does it start? Does it start at the top and come this way, or does it start at the city council level and go up? Would you support a term limit restriction in the city of Ivins?
Yeah, I don't have any problem with that.
Yeah, it's interesting. I hear a lot that there's support there, but it's always like, well, why doesn't it get done? And I think the obvious answer is because power likes to consolidate power, and it once they have it, it's tough to let it go. I think is probably what the key is. But I appreciate you support it. I hope if the topic does come up that you'd support it still. But I do look at the amount of experience that you have, what you've brought to the table, and it would be one of those things where to see Mike go, it might not be filled with another candidate that's as diligent and thoughtful, in all of these aspects as you are. So, there's pros and cons to it. So I understand it's a difficult one. Okay, Mike. Well, that's going to wrap it. Good luck on the primaries. Good luck on the election. Where can everybody find more information other than votestg.com? Where can they find more information about you? Do you have like a website or anything?
I've got a website at www.mikescott4, Ivins.com.
Okay. You find out your policy platforms and all that?
There's at least 170 articles on that.
Nice.
I put up 3 or 4 at least every month on the current issues. Just what are the city issues? What is it that we're dealing with next? And sometimes just sort of my concerns about issues that we really should be tackling. So.
Cool. That's a great website. Good resource. Thank you for doing this. I appreciate you giving your time, because it's a thankless job working on the city council. So I thank you. As a resident of Ivins, I definitely thank you.
I appreciate it. Thanks for the time.
Okay. Good luck. See you out there, guys. Thanks for listening in. If you enjoyed this episode, please like and subscribe. Make sure you're following us on all the social media websites. We love your support. We love the dialogue. We want to continue that going.
Find us at realestate435.com. We'd love to help you find a house here in town or help you get wherever you're going.